Okay, let me share my screen. So I believe that you have access to the to our documents that we shared in advance, but that will be the material that I'm going through for today's session. All right. Everyone can see my screen? You can just give me a thumbs up or an okay. All right, great. Thank you so much, guys. All right, so for this Lark approval training, you have this link where there are pretty much every every information that the approval administrator can find. However, we want to visualize it a little bit so that we walk you through the key points. And then if we have a few more minutes at the end of the sessions, I might take you through one of the basic setup. So what is Lark Approval? So Lark Approval is a one-stop approval platform that make it very easy to arrange whether it's business trip, reimbursement, or anything else that your organization needs. Now, it is deeply integrated with Messenger, it's integrated with Base, and all other Lark features. So you can even go further and integrate with AnyCross to make it like a really all-in-one powerful tool. Now, some of the needs that any organization might need, and sometimes you still use it on paper, or sometimes you use email, or sometimes you would use it as a verbal agreement, or sometimes you have to pay for a whole system to get it done. Now, this is already on Lark. So this will cater to your arranging of business trips, of any reimbursement, hiring processes, buying of office supplies, procurement, all of that can be done on approval. So the approval processes can launch in a group chat, or it can automatically sync the data into Base so that you can process Base and you can set up certain automation accordingly. Now, there are several types of approval administrators. So the first thing we want to talk about is how do you manage these approval, right? Like I mentioned, this session is mostly for the admin, the people who set up the approval process. So how do you set up? You first have to have access to the admin to be able, you are the admin. It's not just any person that go in and say, hey, I want to set an approval for the company. It doesn't work like that. It's usually the HR person, IT people, or the operation people that will help set this up. Now, there is a current approval app administrator. So this person is further subsidized into two types. The first one is primary administrator, and the second one is the administrator whose permission scope includes approval. They can configure all approval settings. So what do we mean by all approval setting? This page. This is the approval setting. They are able to see every single thing in here, every single approval in here. Like you can see, because I am a primary admin, so I belong to the first group, I'm able to see everything. As you can see, a lot of these don't belong to me. A lot of these belong to other team members who have set it up. I'm able to see everything. I'm able to edit everything. I'm able to delete everything. So that is what it means by the highest level in terms of approval. This is the approval app administrator. You can see everything. You can change everything. Now, there is a second level, which is the sub-administrator. So in this case, you can set it. They can configure all approval settings or a specific set of settings. Now, there is a layer even lower is to have a process administrator. Then you can set this such that they can configure setting associated one specified approval. Now, what do I mean by that? So, for example, here in this permission management, I can add a sub-administrator so that they have a scope restriction, or they can have a data export with all approvals, or only with approvals that they have created or they become an owner. Now, if I want to limit it to the person that able to manage just one type of approval, so for example, this leave, then I go into here, click edit, and edit it at the process administrator. So simply speaking, if you want someone to help you set up all kind of approval, like everything. Give them the approval admin, the highest level. If you want someone to be able to create their own approval, manage their own approval, but can't touch other people approval, then make sure to add them in the permission management and give them permission to just edit their own, export their own data, add other people into their own approval. So each department can set up their own approval if that's how you want to do in your organization. But there are if you want these people to just be able to have specific access, then you can do, yes, if you are a super admin, you will have the highest permission. It will be the approval app administrator. You can see everything, you can do everything, you can give everyone access. So, all right, next, admin get started with managing approval. So there are two ways to enter the approval admin. The first way is to go to the Lark desktop app, enter the approval app through Workplace, and click admin console in the upper right corner. The link to approval app will only be visible to administrator. So right now, I know you're on Lark. So if you click on Workplace, go to approval. If you are able to see if you click onto approval and you see this button, this settings sort of buttons button, click on it, that will be the administrator. If you say, oh, I go there, but I don't see, I see the refresh, the setting, the bot, the open in app, I can't see the setting, then that means you're not an administrator. If you think that you need that administrator, please talk to your management and see who is current admin and why you need such access. Now, you go to method 2, is the administrator can go to the Lark admin console, go to Workplace, App Management, and on this page, you can find and enter the approval app and click Go to App Admin Console. So you can see here, Workplace, App Management, search. If you have a lot of apps, you can search it on here to get approval. Click on Configure. When you click Configure, it will open up to this page. And then you can click Go to App Admin Console, and you will end up where I just showed you, which is this page. You will end up right here. So how do you create an approval? Now we have document for you to read further and want to go deeper into how to create an approval. But all you have to do is click on the blue button. So we try to make things as intuitive, as easy for you as possible by having buttons being colored. The only thing that colored on that page. So you can see here the entire page, and you can see the only thing that's colored is the create button right here. So when you click on the create button, you will see all our template. Now, these are the template that we have already created that have all the example that you can use. You can start from there. Now, my recommendation is if you've never set up any approval at all, then please refer to these templates so that you know what are the things that need to be included. Like let's say if your organization is smaller and you don't have a very complicated process, or if you used to move from email approval or Excel sheet approval, then you can refer to this as an example, and then we can build up from there. Versus build from scratch, because the build from scratch, the create custom approval, it will just give you a blank page. And sometimes blank page can be very daunting to a lot of people. So feel free to refer. We have all the basic one. So finance, we have a few. Personnel, we have a few. Procurement, admin, legal, we all have a few. So please refer to that as your inspiration. Now we go to the first page. So when we go to approval, we have four settings that we go to. So you can see the top of the page, you have basic info, form design, process design, more. Now, before we move on, I want to emphasize that we only have 3 languages for this interface: English, Chinese, or Mandarin, and Japanese. So unfortunately, we're not able to change it to your preferred language, like Bahasa, or Vietnamese, or Thai. Unfortunately, that's not the case. However, it is fairly intuitive. You can use it after a few tries. You'll be able to grasp what it means. And I'm here to help you figure out a little bit at the start. So as you can see, there are 4 steps: basic info, form design, process design, more. Again, it's like a journey. The first part of the journey is what is it about? It's a basic description of what it is. So in this page, you can see that there is a name. So name your approval. Description, what is it for? Group. This is just a way to group your approval into different topics. What do I mean by topics? It's like if it is a leave approval, then it's in HR. If it is about procurement, then maybe it's in sales and services group. If it's about reimbursement, maybe it's in finance, or maybe it's in the group of accounting. So you can do that, but it basically just means what is the category it is, and it doesn't really mean much. Now, next, you can go to who can submit the request. So this is simple as leave. I believe everyone is entitled to a certain number of leave. And yes, everyone can apply. But let's say if I'm talking about procurement, procurement is for a certain service that you get from other people. It's not like everyone can just ask for services from other company. It doesn't work like that. So maybe only a certain group that is allowed to apply for this. Or maybe it's about personnel, so hiring, firing. It has to be management that have this access. It's not just, it's not just anyone that can be like, oh, I would like to hire this person. I would like to fire this person. It doesn't work like that, right? If it doesn't work like that in your company, then this is how then set it accordingly in your approval. So who can submit this request? Do you want to show this request on Workplace, or you want to keep it first? You want to do a test and see how it goes first? And then you can also check whether process administrator, these are going to be the people that are going to help you manage this data, process administrator. So when you add them, you will be able to give them access. Will this person be able to edit it? Will that person be able to export the data? Or how would you want the permission to be? So that's the step one, basic information. Form design. This form design is intended to fit your organization's specific needs to ensure members always submit the required information with their requests. So we went through the first one is basic, right? What is it about? The second one is, okay, what does it include? What information do you need? And you can see here, we prepared second page, form design. You have all these widgets. What exactly is widget? Widget is just a way that we name a field, a certain place to input information. So keep it very simple. Usually, I remember I once worked for a company when we applied for leave using email. So all we had to include is our name is already included in our email, so I don't need to do that. I just need to say who is how long and will I be on leave, who will be covering me. And I submit to the person, my manager, and that person will approve it, and then they will forward to, I will CC the HR so that HR can put it down. Oh, Kim is on leave and certain date, right? So in this case, you just keep it simple. What's the name of the leave? How long is the leave? From what date to what date? Who's gonna cover you? That's it. That's all the information you need. So that in that case, that's how that organization that you used to work for need the information that they need. So in your case, you might need some other information, like in this case, like let's say if it is a sick leave, I need an image or an attachment of your medical certificate. That please add in the document that you need them to submit. Here, any kind of associate approval, or let's say I have to have approval from the person that's going to cover for me before I can even apply for leave. Then I will have to first apply for the other one, link the approval here. So these are all the widgets that you can do. Now, keep in mind that we have two types of widget and widget group. So what's the difference between the widget and widget group? Let me just create an approval and show you what it looks like. So what's the difference between the widget and widget group? Widget group will be synced directly to our internal system. So if you are setting up leave application, you have to use our leave widget. This way, you just need to link it to a certain leave type. You start time, end time. It will automatically calculate duration for you, and then it would automatically deduct from the number of leaves that you have. So that's the difference. Whereas if you use a widget and you just like pull in the date or date range, it will not calculate. and deduct it from the leave. Similarly, we have overtime. So if you're going to use overtime, it will then be calculated in your attendance later. Same with business trip, same with our office, shift swap, clock in, clock out, correction. So all of these are linked to our attendance as well. So unless you use these one, it can't work. You can't just choose a random widget here and hope that it will link. That's not how it works. So you can see the widget group, it only allow one because it's like you tell them, you press one button and that button can't do many things. You just do one thing at a time. So be conscious of which one you want to use. Here. So these, as you can see here, these widget groups, we have an explanation here as well, are linked to Lark attendance. So any member on leave or overtime data submitted through this widget group will automatically synchronize to Lark attendance. So if you are using Lark attendance, that's going to be very beneficial. At the very least, if you are using leave, this will also be very useful for you. Right. So now I want to focus a little bit on more advanced setting of this step 2. We are still at step 2, okay? But it's go a little bit more advanced. So one of their, so let me just pull a section. So what you can do is you can set such that you can see here there is a basic setting, and you can have a visibility setting. So you can add a condition. But so you will need to add a condition in order to this number field to appear. What does that mean? It's like if I am applying for a more than if it's a reimbursement for a business trip, anything less than $100, proceed as usual. But anything more than $100 for, like, say, a meal, I need to submit with receipt. I need to have pictures of me, treating the customers or taking the customers out for a meal in order to apply, in order to get approval, because, they require that. So for example, so attachment will be required if you select a certain way. So you can set a visibility setting here. So you can set multiple conditions as well. So here is an example of how you set the condition. So in advanced setting, you can set, if you set the single select, you select something, and then you add another condition group. So it basically can have a combination of different conditions for this particular field to appear. And if you notice on even the pictures and on my page, there's one word that say imperfection. So this is a way that Lark tell you that there's something missing in your form. And if you click on it, it will show. See, I need to enter a title in basic info before I can proceed. So this will prevent me from making any logical mistake. So I won't have to worry that, I didn't fill in any information in this name, and then it didn't go through, and then I couldn't find it because there's no name. You won't be able to publish it if there's still imperfection. So similarly, if I go to form design and I require it to have visibility setting, but there's no condition, it will also give me a error and say that, it's imperfect. You need to correct it before you can post. All right, so now that is step 2. We move to step 3, which is process design. So for process design, it's displayed as a process step. Is click plus to add approvals. See with any kind of recipients. You can add handlers. You can add conditional branches. So here are the button that when you click on plus, you can have approval, CC, handler, conditional branches. And then here is where you set manual, whether it's manual or is it auto approve, auto reject. Now, so far I haven't seen that many people do auto approval, simply because it's most if it's already auto approve or auto reject, why even bother having it in the first place? But what I have seen is a conditional branch. So conditional branch is if a certain person submitted violate a certain rule of the approval. Example, you can't apply for leave for a regular personal time leave less than 3 days in advance, for example. So if you do, you need to apply for emergency leave, in which case it's more limited, so on and so forth. So if someone approve for that, go ahead and approve for that, it will be auto rejected and they have to go back and apply for emergency leave. Or another example is, let's say if I were to, for a procurement project, and I was applying for $100 of this procurement project, but instead of a $100, I mistakenly put an extra zero on it and become 1,000, and it's over the budget. It's allowed for any kind of project. Just an example, for any kind of project. Then in that case, it will be auto rejected because that will be like a safekeeping to make sure that it doesn't go through and you don't mistakenly get approved and things like that. So these are some of the information that you can select. So please feel free to go deeper into each of these steps using add handlers to approval process, designate a role as an approver in approval process, because you can see here, we have many buttons that is very intuitive, very self-understood, like manager, like department supervisor, like user group or specify approval. That's very easy to understand, but there's some of them like if you have a role, if you have a certain role like this, you need to set up it in advance. So please feel free to refer to the link for further info. So here you can also set up who are the submitter and what other things that the submitter can do, approval, and then end. You can set CC recipient at the end. You can set a maximum of 100 CC recipients. So there's also a conditional branches. So conditional branches are used in various conditions, some of which is like the length of your leave. Anything more than 2 weeks, then you need another layers of approval. If you are in a department where you need to have another layers of approval, you also need that. You also need to go to a different branch. Or if your reimbursement exceeds a certain amount, you also need further approval from, say, finance director. So those are some of the examples that you can use branches. So here we make an example of leave duration shorter than 2 days, then proceed to branch A. If leave duration is longer than 2 days, proceed to branch B, so on and so forth. So the question that you are asking on the notification for leave, that one will be a very complicated setting that you will need to use both AnyCross and base, but theoretically that can be done. It just is a lot more complicated than just setting up approval. It doesn't go within approval. So I suggest tuning in for the AnyCross sessions later this week. Maybe you will be able to find a way, because that's that setup might be more, relatable to what you're asking. Condition settings, so here, when you talk about condition setting, so if you are setting up several conditions, then it must satisfy all. You can set the N so that it's you can keep adding conditions so that they have to satisfy all before it can proceed. So, okay, some example I can show you. Okay, so here you can set up form permission to decide if this person can read or edit a certain field. Similarly, approval can set form permission to read and edit. So when do you use this kind of form permission? An example I can think of is, let's say if I need to check the spending of my team. So my team is given, just an example of a budget of $100 a day to, buy customer meals and things like that. No more than that. They have to align to that. But occasionally, after they fill in the document and things like that, they might make a mistake. And instead of $12, they wrote it 22 or something. And I saw it, but how can I correct it? I can ask them to go and, delete or recall the approval and then, submit a new one. Or I can just allow myself or allow the approval to edit it. So that I can say, hey, this is a mistake. Like the receipt clearly say $12, but you've written here 22. I think you made a mistake. Let me just correct it for you. And then, that will be one way. So for accounting, to check this mistake is one good way. For another thing is when you ask for feedback. For example, I am submitting to hire Sydney. Let's say Sydney is this wonderful person that I interview and I like her so much and I want to hire her. So I want to submit to the next level to approve and say, John is my manager and John is going to approve Sydney, but he wants to give input. Then I can set a next level of approval and have the input from manager John. And John will go in and edit. Oh, Sydney is amazing. She will fit right into the team. So that's one thing I can do. Here, you can also set operation whether you allow transferring requests. So let's say allow transfer is something like, example, if I was to ask Sydney to cover for me, and Sydney, I need approval from Sydney because otherwise Sydney said, well, no, I can't cover for you. You can't just ask anyone to cover for you. You have to get them to agree with you first. Then do I allow Sydney to be like, oh, I can't cover for you, but you know what? John can. And let me forward it to John. Or you say, no, you can't. Like it's only Sydney or she will have to reject it and you have to submit again. So that's one way you do it. Again, you can also allow adding, removing our approvals so that let's say if there are 5 people on the approval list, but you feel that 5 is a bit long and you need to move it faster. And as approval, you feel that, okay, I can have the authority to do it. You can allow them to remove the approval. And similarly, you have the permission to allow return approval processes, which means that let's say I disagree with the decision. So I can return it and say, no, you resubmitted. This is wrong. So this is instead of rejecting it, and the person have to go in and then you have a record of like reject and you don't want that. So you would rather that you return it for them to fix the mistake and then continue with the approval. That's you can do as well. And then you can do handwritten signatures, which is something that you can only do on phone because obviously our laptop don't have touch screen. Happy if you have, I don't have touch screen. So what you have to do is use on your phone. And then sometimes you need approval comments are required as well. All right, so now we are moving to the last point, which is point number 4. There will be a lot of buttons, but don't worry, we have a whole list of things that, to explain to you what it means. So the allow withdraw of requests under review, which means that even though they already submitted, it's in the progress, but you can still, they can still cancel their request. So even if they have passed 1 or more steps, but this it have not yet completed the entire flow. So example, if in order to take leave, I need 3 layers of approval. The first setting only allow if I've gone through the step 1 and step 2. If I'm already past step 3, this doesn't work. Yeah, but the usage of touchable laptop percentage is very, very low right now, based on our entire group of users. So that's why it's not yet a priority. So if this checkbox is cleared, then submitter will not be able to withdraw requests that are under review. Once you submit it, that's it. You can't, cancel. Unfortunately, this setting does not apply retroactively, which means once you click it, from that point onward, let's say right now is 4:34 p.m. where I am. If I click that button, then only from 4:35 onwards, it will start taking effect. If you say, oh, I submitted at 4 p.m., sorry, too bad. You can't cancel it. It doesn't work that way. Okay, so allow the withdrawal request within X day of approval. Whether or not the submitter can withdraw an approved request, and if yes, the deadline for such withdrawal. So this is the one that I mentioned earlier, is that if I have 3 steps to get leave and I got to the last step, the final step, then this setting will allow you to cancel it. So this is checked by default, because we understand that a lot of time, plan change, you got approval, but then you didn't go. So you want to take your leave back so that you can use it later and work instead. So if that's the case, you can, allow them to cancel. Allow the modification of requests within X day of approval. Similarly, maybe instead of on leave for 10 days, I'm now on leave for 11 days. I can still make a request, or I can change it so that instead of 10, I actually only take 8 days. So this allow delegate submission basically means you submit for someone else. So it is disabled by default, and it must the delegates must belong to the same approval submission group as the actual submitter, and must share the progress of the approval form after submission. So you can see here, there's a few more links that you can do. You can learn about withdraw approval requests, modifying requests, and request by proxy, which is delegate someone. Okay, we moving on to some of the last bits. Bear with me. I know this is number of buttons is the most complicated. So there is approval deduplication. So why do we have this deduplication thing? It is because a lot of time you set up so that it's the manager is a head of department, and then afterward is the finance CT, like the finance chief of finance, right? CFO. So sometimes, like, of course, you only have one chief finance per company, but occasionally this chief of finance is also your manager and also the head of your department. So a lot of times, for example, let's say Kevin is both the chief CFO, also my boss, and also my group finance department head. If that's the case, it'll go to Kevin and more Kevin. So in this case, what we want to do is we don't want Kevin to approve 3 times, because Kevin might be like, I've already approved it. What more you want me to do? So, oh no, you have 2 more approval you have to do. So a lot of time what you want to do is you can deduplicate it. And you have a consecutive deduplication or a non-consecutive deduplication. So non-consecutive mean if it passed through someone else, you will still let it auto-approve. So you can see here, even though Kevin is the first level, the next level is John, but because Kevin already approved, you let it go, you let it slide, like it's good enough. Kevin already seen it, it's not going to change. All good, auto-approve. Or you only auto-approve if it's second, like it's like back to back. So in this case, Kevin approved. Then if the next step is also Kevin, then skip him. But the next person approved, then Kevin need to see it again. So these are the 2 deduplication that you can do. Now the last one is obviously approval must manually approve all stages required. So no deduplication. Even if Kevin appear 5 times, too bad. Kevin have to approve 5 times. So some of their other setting is allow approvers to do batch process. So batch process, you might think the batch process is never applicable. Like you just need to see it, you need to read the approval. You can't just like scan it and auto approve it. It doesn't make sense to ask them to fill in all the information. But let me give you an example of how my customer done it. Is they require their team to submit an approval to attend a training. Basically a way for the organizer to register just like how you are registering for this webinar, they use approval. So that's how the organization do. But when you show up for the training, the training is gonna it's starting in 10 minutes. but there are 150 people in front of you, and they all come in, oh, I'm Kim, I'm Sydney, I'm John, I'm Kevin, and you don't have enough time to go through one by one and click. So what you can do is you just select that, oh, Kevin, okay, I found you here, tick. Oh, okay, I found you here, tick. Oh, I found you here, tick, and then approve all of them in one go. That way they can proceed to the next stage. The approval can go to the next step. Then it's not a one-step approval and that's it. There's several steps. But at least in this step, when it comes to, managing a large group of very similar one, you want to do it. So let's say if it's a competition registration and you want to make sure that they are physically present, so you see their face, you want to approve them at that stage and then they go to the next level. That's when you go to, actually read the details. But right here, I just need to say, okay, Kevin is here, pass. Then that's how I would use the batch process. You can also do a instant approval team. So this is to make sure that you need to look at a form for less than 3 seconds or using speedy approval to process requests. This is to prevent you making mistake, like accidentally, so it's disabled by default. It also allows speedy approval on approval card. If you clear this checkbox, approval will need to click into the request detail page to process the request. You can't just approve from the summary. All right, last bits. Transfer setting, only transfer to member related to the request. Restricted the transfer scope of the request. So then this is unchecked by default, but then you can also allow if such requests can be transferred to other people. So this will be applicable if, let's say hiring, you shouldn't be able to just transfer the hiring request to just about anyone. If you are the head of organization, then it's important that you take, ownership of that.
So feel free to scan the QR code here and submit your feedback. That could be really important to us. It could be your feedback on the general webinar training and what content you'd like to hearing from now on, and anything we could improve and elevate our training sessions. So all the recommendations, suggestions, your voices are all kinds are super welcome. Bye, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Bye.